Let's start with the question that's been haunting you since the moment they walked away. Why doesn't it hurt them like it hurts me? You've been stuck in the loop, scrolling, checking, replaying every word, every moment, searching for signs that maybe, just maybe, they'll come back. But here's a harsh truth you probably haven't admitted yet. They won't want you back until you stop wanting them. And no, that's not manipulation. It's a psychological shift. A spiritual reset. A wake-up call. Most people get this part wrong. You've been told to show them you care, to fight for love, to post some polished version of your healing journey so they'll see what they're missing. But what if that's exactly what's keeping you stuck? What if your obsession, your pain, your emotional reactions are all feeding the very dynamic that broke you in the first place? This isn't just about breakups. It's about your identity, your worth, your energy. And if you're still giving it away freely to someone who already made their choice, you're not healing, you're bleeding in public. Think about that. In this video, we're flipping everything you've been told. This is not another tired, get your ex back strategy. This is about building something far more powerful, a man who doesn't need them back. And here's the plot twist. They only notice the silence, the detachment, the transformation. Not when you beg, but when you vanish. When you stop orbiting their world and start rebuilding your own. We're going to break this down step by step. I'll show you the invisible truths behind their distance, the dark psychology behind detachment, and how Stoicism isn't about suppressing your emotions, it's about turning them into unshakable strength. You're going to learn how to regain control without games, how to channel pain into progress, and how to walk away so completely, they won't recognize the man you've become. This isn't about getting them back. It's about not wanting them back anymore. And when you finally get that, that's when everything changes. Stay with me, because what's coming next may just be the most important mindset shift you've never been told. And by the end of this video, you won't just be healed. You'll be reborn. 1. You train them to take you for granted. Let's take a hard look at where this all began. You weren't unlovable. You weren't invisible. In fact, you gave, loved, supported, and cared. That's why this hurts so much. But here's the Stoic insight that cuts deeper than any heartbreak. They left not because you weren't enough, but because they felt assured you would always be there. That cushion of certainty, the comfort of your presence, became a cushion that allowed them to walk right out without pause. Think about it. When someone feels your presence is guaranteed, they stop fearing loss. And when fear of loss disappears, respect and desire often follow. You train them to know you would show up no matter what. You'd answer calls at 2 a.m., respond to messages, be available emotionally whenever they needed. They didn't have to prove themselves, so they didn't. They could drift when they felt distant, ghost you when they needed space, walk away when they felt overwhelmed, all without consequences. Because you trained them on how it would end before it even began. Ask yourself, were you consistently there with no boundaries? Did your presence become predictable, so predictable it became invisible? Did you wear your heart on your sleeve so much that it became the default, not the exception? That's how predictability kills desire. When you remove the mystery, you remove the chase, and often the respect. The brain reacts not to how dependable something is, but how rare and valuable it becomes. Emotional investment is about scarcity, about tension. And you let it run dry. This realization isn't easy. It's a punch in the gut. But that's why Stoicism exists, not to comfort you, but to awaken you. Marcus Aurelius taught that we should not resent but reflect. He would ask, who chose this? What part did I play in letting this take root? You weren't naive, you were generous. But generosity without discernment is self-sabotage. You gave abundance when they needed boundaries. You offered all your cards when a few closed hands would have stirred interest, curiosity, respect. And instead of drawing them closer, you let them walk away quietly, because they already had you. Now let's be clear, this isn't about assigning blame onto yourself. It's about responsibility, embracing the fact that your behaviors had results, and those results spoke louder than your words. You didn't fail because you tried to make things work. You failed because you never trained them to value your presence. Look at it through the Stoic lens. Control lies in your own actions, not theirs. You can't control their decisions, but you can control how you show up. And that changes everything. So what do you do now? First, you acknowledge that this pattern happened. You reflect on it, without judgment, just clarity. This is your emotional blueprint. See the moments you assumed you'd always be welcome: midnight texts, constant check-ins, emotional bailouts. Those were leaps of faith without reciprocity. And faith, in Stoic thought, must be granted, not demanded. You fucked up not because you gave, you fucked up because you gave without letting the value grow. Okay, so now you've reflected. You've absorbed the sting of that awareness. What's the next move? You begin to detach, not from caring, but from dependency. You trade unpredictability for presence within limit. Boundaries aren't bars, they're guardrails. They don't keep them out. They keep you in control, in peace. When you begin responding less, letting silence be your symphony, you reclaim your worth. You rebuild the scarcity of your own time, your own energy, your own spirit. Suddenly, they sense something is different. That's the whole point. Do you think you can slip into that role easily? Of course not. Habits don't change with a snap. But Stoicism tells us disruption is the path to growth. Every time you resist the urge to reply immediately, every time you choose yourself over fear of missing out, you train yourself. And you show everyone else a new definition of who you are. What does this look like in practice? It might mean letting calls go unanswered until you see fit. It might mean replying with less emotion, less neediness. It might mean stepping away from social updates that hint at your availability. It could even mean dropping out of texts entirely. The point isn't cruelty or spite. It's recalibration. You are no longer the orphan satellite eternally orbiting them. You are your own man, setting the rules of engagement. And here's what you'll likely witness: initial confusion on their end. They'll wonder, why isn't he answering like he used to? They might test your boundaries, drop a "miss you" text or post something they think will grab your attention. Maybe they spark drama to see if you'll react. But reactions feed the cycle. Silence starves it. Absence ignites curiosity. This is where the paradox of detachment kicks in. Less of you brings more of them. Not because you manipulated it, but because you allowed them to feel you differently. At this point, questions start popping. Do they still like me? Do they miss me? What am I supposed to do? Let them wrestle. You aren't here to rescue their pity. You're here to rescue yourself. We Stoics don't chase external validation. We chase internal mastery. Control is staying composed no matter what they do. Wanting them less is your power play. Ironically, once you truly stop wanting them, that is when desire rearises on their side. They don't want you while you're wanting them. But when you remove the want, desire grows in your wake. That shift? It doesn't happen overnight. It's one moment at a time. One silent reply. One morning when you choose the gym over checking their feed. One evening when you choose reading over replaying last words. Pain may linger, but it loses its grip when you stop feeding it. And yes, you're in pain, but Stoicism calls us to observe pain, not be consumed by it. Marcus Aurelius said something like, "Pain is like the blade, it cuts, but it also carves. It shapes. It defines. And here, it can only define you if you let it." Remember, this process isn't cold. It's disciplined. It's not hate. It's not apathy. It's ownership. You own your decisions, your time, your feelings. And as you do, you rewrite the script. You stop playing the ghost who haunts them. You become the man who stands unguarded, unreactive, unsurprised by their attempts. That calm, that stillness? That's your new core. That's the force that shatters assumptions, that pierces through patterns, that shifts their view. You are not their fallback. You are your own standard. Keep asking yourself, what am I training people to expect from me? Do they see scarcity or easy comfort? Am I anchored in principle or anchored in their presence? Those questions are your compass. And each day you live by them, you teach yourself and everyone around you how you are to be treated. That's the transformation. That's the unseen power of being the rare prize, not the given plan. So yes, the first step may be brutal. But it's stoic. It's necessary. You train them to take you for granted. Now train yourself to take yourself seriously. And when you do, the world, including they who once wandered off, won't be able to ignore it. Because something rare has emerged, a man remade. A heart at peace with itself. A presence that's felt without needing announcement. That's power. That's peace. That's Stoic relationships in action. 2. Emotional distance changes the game. You might be wondering, how does silence speak louder than words? How does stepping back create momentum when you know it feels like you're giving away ground? The answer lies beneath the surface. It's the emotional tension that shifts when you detach. In this section, we explore exactly how emotional distance changes the game, why it works, and how it ties into Stoic relationships. First, let's dig into the psychology behind emotional absence. As long as you're visibly struggling, available at all hours, reacting to their presence, you're giving off signals they can control. They know exactly where to find you, how to plug back in. But when you pull away, that predictability vanishes. Humans are wired to seek patterns. When a pattern breaks, when someone who was always there suddenly isn't, it creates a vacuum. That vacuum draws attention, curiosity, sometimes regret. It's not manipulation, it's a natural consequence of shifting dynamics. In Stoic philosophy, this is about applying emotional discipline and recognizing where your control lies. You can't dictate how they feel. You can't force longing or respect. But you can control your own presence. And when you choose distance, you make space for new dynamics. You embody the principle of appearing scarce. You live the tension. You live the mystery. And that tension? That's the magnetic field they can't resist. So what happens when you begin practicing emotional distance? Expect inner resistance. Your limbic system, the emotional part of your brain, will flood you with doubt. Texts, posts, opportunities to reinsert yourself. You'll feel the familiar itch. Maybe I should just reach out, make sure they're okay. But here's the test. Are you moving from need or from strength? Are you filling a void or preserving your peace? Stoicism teaches that discomfort born of restraint strengthens our character. The friction you feel is the fire forging you into a man who doesn't tremble at the thought of loss or rejection. And yes, this will cause ripples. You won't just disappear quietly. They'll notice. They might reach out. Hey, how are you? Or, saw you liked my post. Resist. Respond if you must, but never from fear. Respond from choice. Slowly, deliberately. Not to invoke guilt or initiate drama. Just to show you're still present, but on your terms. This will shift the power dynamic. You're no longer chasing, they're reaching. And even if what they send is mundane, the fact that they reach tells you something. Emotional distance spurs emotional engagement. This cycle is the heart of Stoic relationships, the dance between inward composure and outward calm. You're not cold, you're contained. You're not distant out of spite, you're restrained out of respect for yourself. And that respect creates boundaries others can't ignore. Boundaries define value. Boundaries protect peace. And boundaries mirror self-worth. Ask yourself, how would your life be different if your emotional responses were truly your own? What if no text, post, or breadcrumb could push you off balance? What if regret, what if longing, what if breakdowns, they all turn to questions instead? Is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, let it go. That's Stoicism at its finest. That's power rediscovered. The truth is, emotional distance isn't absence, it's presence perfected. It's the man who is there, when he chooses. It's the man who is engaged, when he is invited. It's about being available to life, not to someone else's whims. It's the difference between living your story and playing a side character in theirs. You're not detaching to deny your feelings. You're detaching to redirect them to yourself. Your energy is your own. Investments deserve returns. And when people step away with emotional cost, we reevaluate. That's natural. But revaluation only happens when you stop feeding the costs. You aren't punishing them. You're protecting yourself. You're healing. You're evolving. Emotional distance pioneers confidence. When you can stare at pain, confusion, longing, and choose not to act, you stand bold. That's no small thing. That's resilience. That's stoicism in everyday life. That's rising above the script. And as you grow, you may notice their tone changing too. Maybe more direct, maybe more curious. If they text more, that's data. They're engaging. They feel the absence. If they don't, that's just information. Either way, you don't need to control it. You just observe. You adjust based on your values and your mission, not theirs. So here's the mission: remove emotional reactivity. Replace it with emotional regulation. Live in calm defiance of emotional chaos. Strength doesn't shout. It centers. It knows silence has volume. It knows stillness radiates more impact than uproar. Remember, applied properly, emotional distance isn't rejection, it's a return to yourself. A reclamation. A reset. You take the space you deserve, not out of stubbornness, but out of self-respect. And when you do, everything shifts, not because of who they are, but because of who you become. If you find this insight valuable, like the video and comment. Number 1, if this part hit hard. And if you want more guidance on mastering Stoic relationships and the principles of emotional mastery, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next steps in this transformation journey. 3. Control isn't about them, it's about you. We've covered how emotional distance reshapes dynamics, how silence sparks interest, but now we confront the core. At the heart of this transformation is the concept of control, not control over another person, but control over yourself. This is where true Stoicism reveals its power. It isn't about dominating others, it's about mastering your own reactions, owning your decisions, and reclaiming your peace from the chaos. Begin with this question: how much of your heartbreak stems from what they did, versus what you allowed yourself to feel? It's easy to blame them for disappearing or pulling away. But real growth comes when you turn inward and ask, how much did I hand over my emotional peace? Every time you reacted, checking texts compulsively, replaying memories, seeking reassurance, you surrendered a piece of your agency. And that's where they found control. In a Stoic relationship, the power lies in indifference, not in apathy, but in emotional equanimity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." So when she posts a new photo, when a message pings out of nowhere, when your chest tightens and your mind floods with what-ifs, that's your opportunity to assert moral autonomy. You control whether you engage. You control the tone of your reply. You control the narrative of your heart. How do you start? Through repeated, intentional practice. Feel the urge to go check her profile. Pause. Ask, is this reaction useful to me? Is it in alignment with my values? If not, choose differently. That's the discipline. That's where Stoicism anchors you. You don't deny emotion. You acknowledge it. You thank the signal for showing up. Then you return to center, because nothing outside deserves so much of your time, energy, or focus. And what about when she texts? That old feeling inside you, hope, guilt, longing, will push you to respond impulsively. But under this model, you pause. Evaluate. Is this the voice of longing, or strength, need, or identity? When you wait, even a few hours, even a day, you shift from reaction to decision. That delay isn't avoidance, it's respect. Respect for yourself, your process, and your peace. And that respect radiates beyond rejection. It shapes a new narrative. You are not defined by her validation. This shift disrupts old patterns. She can drop breadcrumbs, random likes or half-hearted messages, aimed at pulling you back in. But if you don't bite, if you respond neutrally or not at all, you show that the power is yours. They no longer control your emotions. You control how they land, what you let in, and whether you send energy run. Sometimes this path is lonely. Friends will tell you, "Why not reply? Just one message." But Stoicism reminds you of your starting point. You don't reply because you're vulnerable, you reply because you're practicing sovereignty. Because each time you respond from your values, not your wounds, you rebuild your center. You become disciplined. You become whole. In practical terms, control looks like not refreshing her story, logging off when the impulse hits, turning off notifications, deleting her threads if needed. In that space, you reclaim your focus on work, habits, goals, reflection. You stop asking, "What is she thinking?" And you start affirming, "What am I building?" It's a question of orientation. Stoicism trains you to anchor in values, not validation. In long-term peace, not short-term relief. And here's the paradox. In that moment of self-possession, emotional mastery looks magnetic. The more you don't react, the more they notice. The more you live from principle, the more powerful you become. That's the silent shift. You don't need them to respect your process. They do. You're not echoing their messages. You're shaping your own life. So when internal storms rage, when doubt, guilt, longing test your resolve, ask again, is this within my control? If not, let it go. If yes, shape it with purpose. That's the core of Stoicism, and the foundation of lifelong strength. This isn't just about a breakup. It's about your life. You bring this mindset to work, to friendships, to uncertainty, to loss. The more you practice, the sharper your inner compass becomes. And one day, you look back and see, you weren't just surviving, you were forging a man who doesn't collapse at the whim of another's feelings. In the next section, we'll look at how that internal control fuels your external transformation, your glow up, not for them, but for yourself. 4. The glow up isn't for revenge, it's for respect. The moment you decide to elevate yourself, it can feel like you're stepping onto unfamiliar ground. It's tempting to chase a transformation that screams, "Look what you lost." But Stoicism teaches us a deeper truth. True transformation isn't performative. It isn't sculpted for others' validation or broadcast for external applause. Instead, it's built quietly, powered by integrity, dignity, and unwavering principle. That's why this glow-up isn't for revenge, it's for respect. Respect for yourself, your future, and the unwavering evolution of your core. Let's unpack what that means. So often after a breakup, men fall into the trap of redefinition through image alone, getting ripped, posting selfies, curating their feed to show they're good. But this is surface level. It's emotional masking. Stoicism rejects masking. It demands substance over show. When you decide to improve, you aren't chasing her attention, you're climbing back into your own orbit, centered in self-respect. This doesn't mean you hide your progress. It means your progress exists on your terms, rooted in your self-worth, not reaction to her absence. That's who real leaders are. Ask yourself, what aspects of your life have been neglected? The gym, your craft, your friendships, your mental health? The glow-up isn't about impressing her, it's about declaring to yourself, I am valuable. I am worthy. I honor my potential. That declaration begins with humility and small, consistent wins. A morning workout, an hour of learning, a book read, not because it brands you as better, but because it reaffirms your identity. You're rebuilding from the ground up, stone by stone, not building facades for someone else's approval. Now, let's be honest, vanity is human. A chiseled jawline can give a momentary ego boost. But in Stoicism, every outward action must reflect inner direction. So yes, present well. But present from principles, not post-breakup theatrics. When you step out with confidence born of purpose, something shifts in energy. That shift doesn't shout, it radiates. People notice, not because the transformation is loud, but because it's undeniable. That's called gravitas. And gravitas isn't pursued, it's earned. Another crucial component? emotional intelligence. The glow-up isn't just physical or professional. It's emotional refinement. Maybe previously you reacted impulsively. Now you pause. You process. You articulate your needs. You hold space for discomfort without dissolving into it. When people, past or present, see that calm, you no longer seem fixed, you seem complete. And that completion is a magnetic force. Not clever. Not calculated. Magnetic. Here's the paradox. A glow-up rooted in respect, not revenge, often triggers more attention from others, including exes, than any desperate gesture ever could. They don't come back for petty proofs. They notice the man who walks with head held high, who doesn't chase headlines or acknowledgement. They notice the man who doesn't need them anymore, not because he shut them out, but because he opened himself to more. That's powerful. That's adult. That's stoicism in motion. It also deepens your Stoic Relationships ecosystem. When you build from versioned integrity, your connections shift. Friendships deepen. Respect grows. You communicate from wholeness. No leftover vulnerability from someone else alters your presence. You're solid. You're calm. You're intentionally present. That kind of presence draws others in, romantically, socially, professionally, in deeper and more authentic ways. You're no longer available, you're valuably accessible. Does the glow-up phase scare you? Good. That means it matters. When you do things that terrify you, starting that project, showing up at a networking event alone, posting a personal win, you speak volumes to yourself. You affirm internal courage, not external applause. Stoicism champions that. It teaches us that authentic growth is vulnerability refined into courage, fear acknowledged but not obeyed. Your transformation should challenge your trajectory. If you're leveling up just to win someone back, it's short-sighted. If you level to honor yourself, it's enduring. Your energy becomes an invitation, not to follow, but to step into someone aspiring to greatness. That's how legacies are built, not through grand gestures but through consistent brilliance quietly refined. So what's the next step? Choose one area to improve, not to show off, but to grow. Block time for that work daily. Journal your journey. What part of my glow-up reflects who I really want to become? And measure by internal truth, not external metrics. Did you show up today? Did you stay centered when old thoughts echoed through your mind? Did you resist wanting to project for them and instead invest in your own inner wealth? Live your transformation privately, but keep the results visible. Not for them, for life. Because life asks for proof of change, we become who we show up as. So keep showing up. Keep building. Let people, past and future, watch the silent ascent, the quiet confidence, the steady repair of scar and soul. That's where Stoic relationships bloom, not in desperation, but in completeness. This glow-up is radical. Not because you post highlights of the process, but because you anchor yourself in the daily grind, in the internal metrics. You stop asking for her permission in your ego. You stop relying on her optics for your worth. You stop needing her return. You win when she watches. Not because she hoped. Because she never had you back in this form. If you resonated with this part of the journey, tap, like, and comment, number 1, to let me know it landed deep. Subscribe and ring the bell, because next, we go deeper into the final stages of mastering self. Not headlines, not validation, but your own sovereign path. Onward to part 5. 5. Indifference is louder than anger. Now, we've reached the stage that turns quiet strength into seismic shift. We call it indifference, but let's be clear, Stoic indifference is not coldness, not emotional freezing. It's a radical surrender. It's freedom from needing their approval, their attention, their return. And while anger stains your spirit, while sadness steals your fire, indifference ignites something deeper, sovereignty. That's why indifference is louder than anger. Be loud in spirit, silent in demand, and unchained when others expect you to still sway. Imagine someone who wronged you. An ex who ghosted, a friend who betrayed, a partner who left. Everyone around you expects a reaction. They expect you to spiral, to rant, to chase. They expect chaos. But when you don't unravel, when you don't chase, when you don't plead, you create more disruption than any dramatic breakdown could. You collapse their expectations by simply not behaving predictably. It's natural to feel wounded. That panic that arises when they stop responding, the knot in your chest when their name appears on your screen, those are real. But the man who masters indifference doesn't ignore that pain, he neutralizes its power. He says, "I feel it, but it doesn't rule me." That admission is both human and heroic. Emotion acknowledges the wound, indifference removes the wound as the center of your existence. When they drop a message or social media like, a message intended to reel you back in, what do? If you respond with anger, you surrender your calm. If you mythologize their absence, you hand them status. But if you don't respond, not out of spite but out of serenity, you shift the balance. Their attempt at re-engagement becomes a footnote in your day, not the headline of your life. That, my friend, is power. Stoic wisdom calls this apatheia, freedom from destructive passions. Not absence of caring, but absence of fallout. It's earning emotional immunity. So that no external move, no flirtation, no provocation can overthrow your equanimity. When you embody that, not only does your own spirit find calm, but they see someone they can't push, pull, or provoke. And so, in the space where drama once held power, now only silence resides. Silence with depth, silence with gravity. What does that silence do? It dismantles their assumptions. They expect you will react. They expect you will chase. They expect you will break. So when you don't, it hits them like dissonance. They say, "Maybe, did I miscalibrate him? Did I account for him too little?" The doubt arises from indifference, not cruelty, but immovable presence. That's the trauma your stillness gives them. Not the trauma of heartbreak, but the trauma of having no control. Ask yourself, when memories whisper, "If I shared how I feel, he'd come back." What do you say? The man of indifference says, "Maybe, but only if it aligns with my values." He doesn't reject them. He rejects being defined by them. That distinction matters. It's not about disappearing. It's about not letting disappearance define you. And here's the real test. Does your silence come from peace, or from pain? If it's pain, refine it. Heal it. Transform it. If it's peace, own it. Let it radiate. Every conversation you don't restart, every memory you don't entertain, every urge you don't act on, that builds something. That builds gravity. That builds a man who needs nothing from anyone to stand in his own light. You don't need her to know you're okay, because you already do. You don't need her to believe you're whole, because you already graduated. Indifference isn't the absence of memory, it's the validation of your present. It says, your absence is not empty, it's rooted elsewhere, in purpose, in growth, in centeredness. This is the toughest stage, because indifference confronts you with your own freedom. You're no longer bound by past roles, lover, friend, follower. That role ended. Who do you become when role limps off the stage? Someone unassigned. Someone unclaimed. Someone free. Someone alive again with infinite directions. In psychological terms, this dismantles the script of dependence. They feel it, they don't hear it. They sense you've dropped the narrative, and that void becomes louder than any criticism you could command. In that space, they might come back, but not because you beckoned. They come back because who you became is more than they thought they lost. Indifference also reveals character to the world. Real people, future partners, they see that stability. They sense it. That quiet light attracts those who already glow. Which earthly presence more valuable than that? Now, is indifference easy? Hell no. It's the uphill path of integrity. But this is where Stoic relationships shine brightest. Relationships not built on codependency, not built on action-reaction. Built on inner balance, built on unconditional valued presence. That transforms every future negotiation, every heartbreak buffer, every unseen challenge. You no longer need to train or background condition others. You stand. Period. When you wake up one morning and they're not your first thought, don't kid yourself, that's rare. Some part of you still cares. But that part no longer dictates your script. It becomes an interesting footnote in your day's mission. That's growth. That's conscious sovereignty. You might see them later, drifting towards conversation, toward conflict, toward casual banter. You'll recognize the script, old roles calling, old expectations. You'll respond differently, with measured tone, with quiet courtesy. Not because you're invested again, but because civilized doesn't tarnish your distance. You keep your borders but remain human. And humans remember that kind of grace far longer than any dramatic meltdown. This is the ultimate test of Stoicism, mastery not of absence, but of presence within absence. You verify. Your emotional landscape is not subject to external approval. That internal ecosystem is flourishing on values, on ownership, on choice. Eventually, indifference invites transformation beyond a breakup, beyond all relational drama. You become unfuckwideable. You steer your own ship through storms of opinion, rejection, confusion. You can't be tamed by external events because you've anchored inside. There's serenity even in rebellion, even in solitude, even in uncertainty. And when you stand there like that, not explosive, not defensive, not anxious, you've arrived. The gravity shift is naked but palpable. They feel it. Friends feel it. Future partners feel it. You don't induce fear, you evoke respect. Real respect. Born of internal calibration. So don't mistake silence for missed opportunity. It is opportunity. Sometimes the best worlds thrive in quiet. Indifference isn't absence, it's shape. It's the shape of calm at height. It's the contour of peace you carve when emotions and expectations recede. It's the stance of man reconstructed in integrity, not reaction. As this part closes, hold this. When nothing you do is for them, everything you do becomes for you. Indifference is not emptiness. It's fullness. And in that fullness, life becomes richer than validation, because it's validated. You, held by your own purpose, become the measure, not the measured. This is the edge of transformation. Step beyond needing. Step into becoming. Carry your quiet without demand. Let life rise to you. And when they look back, it won't be to find you reacting. It'll be to find you evolving. 6. The paradox of letting go. When you first hear the phrase, "let go," it can sting. Letting go feels counterintuitive, like surrendering, giving up, or admitting defeat. But here's the razor-sharp truth Stoicism teaches. The moment you truly let go is when you gain everything. That's the paradox. You shed the weight of what you can't control, and suddenly lift to the power of what you can. You held on because you believed your worth was tied to their presence. You chased because silence hurt more than effort. You reacted because emotion felt more real than stillness. But Stoic wisdom says the real work isn't in holding on, it's in releasing. Release the hope. Release the attachment. Release the need for closure. That's not emptiness, it's liberation. And that liberation transforms everything about your inner landscape, your relationships, and your future. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting them. It doesn't mean rejecting memories or betraying parts of yourself that love deeply. It means you stop making them the axis around which your world spins. You step off that stage with quiet dignity and say, "Thank you for the lessons, you don't define me anymore." That reframing shatters the narrative that gave them control. It replaces entanglement with energy. And here's the paradox in action. When you stop chasing, suddenly you're chasing yourself. You're freeing up emotional space to invest in your hobbies, your craft, your health, your next big idea. You start waking up and asking, "What am I building? Who am I becoming?" Letting go becomes a pivot point, your redirect from survivor to creator. It might feel like you've lost direction at first. But that void? It's fertile ground. You can plant roots anywhere. The Stoics teach that an external event is never the final measure of us. Who we become in the aftermath is. You let go, Yes, but not to fall. You let go to find air beneath your wings. That upward shift is invisible at first. And people around you, friends, family, past lovers, might not notice until they see the fruit of your transformation. Because letting go doesn't demand applause. It only reveals over time. There's beauty in this paradox. Their memory fuels your rebirth, not your breakdown. The flame might have burned out, maybe by their choice, but the embers remain inside you. You stoke them with intention, pouring oxygen into purpose. And the shape of that fire? It's not shaped by nostalgia, it's shaped by vision. Letting go creates the space between embers that turns heat into forge. Of course, the temptation to look back will arise. Impulses to reopen old wounds, or reach out with nostalgia, or engage over old feelings, it will all come. That's the moment your character is forged. You can respond by reclaiming your center. I've done my work. I've reclaimed my peace. I don't owe you a shelf in my heart. That clarifying statement isn't emotional withdrawal, it's self-honor. And when you live from that place, others feel it. They feel your presence as a contribution, not a deficit. This paradox extends to every area of life. In career, letting go of the idea, I have to be seen, allows your work to speak. In friendship, releasing approval-seeking helps you hold healthier boundaries. In emotional growth, letting go of shame lets joy expand. Letting go isn't desertion, it's design. You strip away what's expected and rebuild what's essential. Letting go is also a social signal, not drama, but clarity. People begin to treat you differently, not because you posted about it, but because you started walking differently. That's the intangible of gravitas. And that gravitas isn't built on what you hold, but what you release. The release of fear. The release of obligation. The release of attachment to outcome. Ask yourself, what would it take for me to simply let go? Not as a trick. Not as a breakup ritual. But as a genuine pivot, one rooted in your sovereignty. What would that feel like? How would your mornings change? Your evenings? Your relationships? Your dreams? Plant this question in your day. Let it ferment. Sit with the discomfort. Let the paradox surface. The discomfort is the valley you cross to get to the mountain. And step with discipline. Let each moment of detachment be a declaration. I am not cascading inward. I am ascending. Simple, yes. Easy, no. But effective beyond measure. As you do this, you'll notice a curious thing. The things worth having start to show up. Stronger friendships, clearer goals, richer emotional texture. And maybe, just maybe, they show up too. The people who once left may well revisit, not out of pity or regret, but recognition of change, of transformation so definitive it requires accountability. Stoic relationships are not passive. They are dynamic. You let go not to say goodbye, to say hello to yourself. And that greeting reverberates inward and outward. It redefines how you show up, how you're received, and how you respond to everything life throws at you next. So here's the final test. Let's say they reach out. Maybe they want to catch up. Do you respond with nostalgia or neutrality? With wounded longing or wise curiosity? Letting go prepares you to respond not from reflex, but from reflection. You ask, does this align with my growth? Or is this a detour that leads me back to old patterns? Letting go lets you choose. And that choice, you will make it from a place of abundance, not fear. From hope, not need. From purpose, not drama. That's the apex of transformation. The man who doesn't just let go but steps into a new story. One where external validation is optional, not essential. One where you're not waiting for them to notice. You're waiting for life to meet you where you are. And it will. If this part shifted something in you, tap like and comment, number 1, to let me know it landed deep. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because next we'll conclude this journey and anchor everything you've built into a life you own fully. When you embarked on this journey, you started with a heart raw from loss and a mind clouded with doubt. You wondered how fleeting your emotions had become, how easily someone you loved could leave, and whether you would ever feel whole again. Today, after navigating silence, control, transformation, indifference, and the paradox of letting go, you stand at a new threshold. This is not a comeback in the old sense. It's not about grand reunions, reconciliatory gestures, or chasing approval. It's about the rebirth of a man free from emotional dependency and driven by inner purpose. It's about knowing, beyond a shadow of doubt, that your worth is not measured by their presence, their attention, or their return. You train them to undervalue you. You learn how emotional absence and quiet gravity reframe desire. You master the difference between reaction and decision. You glow up not for revenge, but as a monument to self-respect. You realized indifference. Assertive, sovereign, unwavering, is the sound they can't replay. You discovered that letting go isn't a loss. It's a liberation that reveals the blueprint of a life lived in freedom. This is Stoicism in motion. Not a cold philosophy, but a living path, one that respects feelings but transcends them, that names wounds but refuses to be ruled by them, that invites discipline without dismissing humanity. You've embraced Stoic relationships, where connection isn't driven by fear, guilt, or longing, but by choice, presence, and mutual growth. In moments of doubt, ask yourself, am I falling back into old patterns? Or am I rising into sovereignty? Let your answer guide you. When you feel the instinct to chase, reframe, what if I channeled that same energy into my craft, my vision, my deeper connections? When memories surface, see them as data, not destiny. They're glimpses of where you once were, not where you belong now. Remember, healing isn't a one-time event, it's ongoing. Pain doesn't vanish overnight. You will have days when the ground feels shaky, when the echo of her voice or the sight of her name tugs at something deeper. That's grace in disguise, a reminder of your humanity, not a regression. Use those moments as chances to show who you've become. Sit with the emotion. Anchor in purpose. Respond from integrity. This transformation isn't static. Old chapters close, new ones open. They might glance back, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of respect, maybe out of longing. But whatever their reason, that pause is theirs, not yours. You're not waiting for them to see it. You're living it out. And living it out matters more than being witnessed in the moment. Let this journey ripple outward. Share it with others who are stuck, friends, brothers, colleagues, who don't yet know there's another way. Model what it means to center yourself. That's mentorship without preaching. It's influence without control. And it's the natural byproduct of living a life aligned with your values. Someday, you'll look back and realize you didn't just survive heartbreak. You transcended it. You don't bear the wound anymore, you wear the wisdom. That's your new armor. Not cold or hollow, but tempered, unyielding yet alive. So when you move forward, which you will, carry your stillness with intention. Carry your boundaries with compassion. Let your presence say what words never could. I stand here, not because I needed you, but because I built myself. This, ultimately, is what they can't come back for, not because they won't return, but because the man they once knew no longer needs to be saved. He's already been rebuilt from the inside out. And that is freedom. Thank you for leaning in. Thank you for doing the work. Keep forging your path in quiet strength and relentless purpose. The world is waiting to meet the man you've become.